Thanks for your company. To cricket first, and Adam Voges has become the oldest cricketer to make a century on debut as Australia moved into a powerful position against the West Indies in Dominica. 35-year-old Voges made an unbeaten 130 before the tourists took two late wickets on day two of the first test. Duncan Huntsdale reports.
It was no surprise that a player who first tasted Sheffield Shield cricket back in 2002 had the patience to carve out a crucial century.
100 in his first test innings, and what an important 100 in the context of the match.
Massive excitement, massive relief, just to be able to get this opportunity and make the most of it.
Seasoned test players came and went as the West Indies dominated the opening session, thanks to leg spinner Devendra Bishu.
Oh, what a delivery!
Unlike Australia on day one, West Indies dropped the tough chances and offered easy runs to the tail. The home team looked cool, but the bowling was more cold than hot.
Wow.
The West Indies of 30 years ago would have gone in for the kill, but number 11 Josh Hazlewood and Voges added 97 runs, with the WA captain becoming the 20th Australian to score a century on debut, and surpassing Zimbabwe's Dave Houghton as the oldest player to achieve the feat.
It's an incredibly hard team to get into. So I've had to bide my time, I've had to wait a long time to get a crack.
An unbeaten 130 ensured Australia had a first innings lead of 170 runs, a deficit that looked a long way off for the West Indies when they lost two wickets in as many balls late in the day. Duncan Huntsdale, ABC News.
Well, it's the halfway point of the NRL season and just 4 points separates 5th and 14th place on the ladder. The round kicks off tonight with the Broncos hosting Manly and the Tigers facing the Titans. With his thoughts on some of the key games of the round, I'm joined by Grandstand Rugby League commentator in Brisbane, Quentin Hull. Quentin, thanks for your company this evening. You will be at the Manly-Brisbane game, calling it for ABC Radio tonight. There's been a lot at stake here for Manly in the past week, re-signing Daly Cherry Evans. Is that going to give them a bit of a spur against the informed Broncos?
It's going to be a very interesting night, Duggo, because the Daly Cherry Evans story, generally, you'd think a key player for Queensland coming to Lang Park with the teams for Origin 2 to be named on Tuesday. You'd think, well, let's just see if he can get through with his shoulder injury and he's okay. It's still not confirmed that he's playing, but the word is very strong that he will make his return from injury tonight. But that injury has almost been just put into the background because of the whole backflip on his deal with the Gold Coast Titans. We go to Lang Park tonight almost intrigued to see whether or not the Queensland fans might turn on one of their own, because certainly north of the Tweed there's the feeling that with Cherry Evans staying at Brookvale, having of course previously pledged his allegiance to the Titans, that there's a feeling of rugby league treason, and Queenslanders aren't very happy about it.
Well, what about the Broncos? You've watched a lot of them this season. They're pretty close to full strength tonight. They're not going to take any risk with Manly, you wouldn't think?
And not taking any risks with their key players either. Interestingly, Wayne Bennett having rested Justin Hodges and Sam Thaiday from the win against the Canberra Raiders last weekend at the nation's capital. Those two players come back in tonight, but Corey Parker is going to be rested. So he's just trying to manage those senior players through. This has been a Broncos team that's been exceptional, really, since Wayne Bennett returned to Red Hill. But Manly's got a very good record in Brisbane. And you put Cherry Evans back into that team with Foran and Lyon. We know that those are world-class backs. If the Seagulls can get enough traction against this well-performed Broncos pack of this year, I think we're in for a very interesting game.
Well, let's have a look at a couple of the other key matchups of the weekend, Quentin. The Panthers playing the Storm, two teams coming off losses, and the Panthers probably needing to get a move on.
Yeah, and they haven't got Matt Moylan. It just has been a terrible year injury-wise. So just as that real spine gets back into the team as far as the organisational part of the team is concerned, you know, Wallace back last week to join Soward and Seguiaro. Now Matt Moylan's down with that ankle injury, so that hasn't helped Ivan Cleary. But look, the concern over Billy Slater is a continual one. We know that he just got himself right for Origin 1, didn't play last week. He's not 100% even if he does get out and play tomorrow. And it looks like Marika Koroibite's going to be out for 6 weeks with a thumb injury as well for the Storm. So both teams have got their injury worries. This is a Penrith team that still performed pretty well despite its spate of injuries. So I'm sure as much as the Storm will have that great experience around the likes of Cameron Smith, I give Penrith a really good chance.
Well, on Monday, a couple of games on Monday. Firstly, the Bulldogs and the Dragons. I think the Dogs have been installed favourites for some reason in this game. They've lost Tony Williams, we hear today, for the season, but James Graham coming back. But the Dragons have been the story of the season so far.
Yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic, and I think every rugby league fan at the moment just wants to see Josh Dugan play. The way that he's performed for his club, the way he performed in Origin, he's been in absolutely outstanding form, the Dragons fullback. And it's interesting that these two teams played in the relatively recent past, but I mean, what credit do we give that? Because that was a Bulldogs team back in round 6 that was beaten comprehensively, 31 points to 6 by the Dragons, but James Graham wasn't there among a number of others. Yeah, it's hard to get a line on how the Bulldogs are going because of that interruption they had with their suspensions after the bizarre circumstances of Good Friday. We know that the halves haven't been in great nick. Still Josh Reynolds, perhaps, is he playing to get himself onto the bench or some role in Origin 2? Trent Hodkinson has got to try and find some of his better footy. So too many question marks for mine for the Dogs. I mean, they could come up and surprise, but I'm certainly going with the form of the Dragons and the form of Dugan.
Quentin Hull, thanks for your time. Good calling tonight, and you can hear that match on a local radio in Queensland.
Thanks, Mark.
Former St Kilda and Sydney forward Tony Lockett has been named as the 26th legend of the Australian Football Hall of Fame. 6 other former AFL players have been inducted, including Jason Ackermanis and Michael O'Loughlin.
As the greatest goal kicker in the game's history, Tony Lockett was a popular choice as the latest legend of the game. Lockett remains the only full forward to have won the Brownlow medal and is a 4-time Coleman medalist, but his new accolade tops the lot.
I'm blown away. I'm totally overwhelmed with it. I really appreciate it. I'm very honoured.
The size and aggression that made Lockett such a handful also got him into trouble at times in a career that had its fair share of controversies. But the one constant was goals. Lockett's desire to stay ahead of the champions of his era, like Hawthorn's Jason Dunstall, saw him reach new heights.
Our rivalry between the two of us, even though there wasn't much said about it, I think we probably spurred each other on a bit. But I was hell-bent on beating him.
One of the game's biggest personalities, Jason Ackermanis, was recognised for his stellar career that included 3 premierships and a Brownlow, and he's lost none of his trademark cheek.
To coach someone like me would be an absolute pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with Lee admitting that it wasn't that bad after all.
While Sydney Premiership winner Michael O'Loughlin was hailed for his quality and endurance over 303 games.
Pretty much had to change my body, and if it wasn't put for Paul Roos, I probably would have ended my career pretty early.
Fremantle has its first inductee into the Hall of Fame with former Docker and Kangaroo Peter Bell. St Kilda Brownlow medalist Neil Roberts was also added to the Hall of Fame, as were South Australian football legend Bob Hammond and the Waffles' greatest goal kicker Austin Robertson Jr. Peter Lusted, ABC News.
Grandstand AFL commentator Matt Clinch joins me from Adelaide to look ahead to the weekend's action. Matt, welcome. Firstly, tonight, Freo versus the Tigers. The Dockers, the only undefeated team, and the Tigers seemingly back in form. Can you see the Tigers pulling an upset tonight?
Yeah, I can. They've got a good record in Perth, but it's going to take something special in order for the Tigers to really convince us that they're better than Fremantle at this stage of the season. The Dockers have really been super impressive so far in the season. They haven't put a foot wrong. They've had some good victories so far against Port Adelaide, West Coast and Sydney. They've done what they've had to do. Fremantle, they haven't always played their best footy, but I think they'll be a bit more tested after the bye when they've got Collingwood and Hawthorn. So far so good for Fremantle. They're not making too many changes in terms of their personnel, which is the case again this week. And Nat Fyfe is probably the best player in the competition at the moment, the Brownlow medal favourite. And Jack Riewoldt joked during the week that maybe they should throw their whole team on him, and probably that's not a bad idea.
Well, Richmond have surprised in the last couple of matches. They've changed their style a little bit. They've slowed it down a bit, but defensively they've been impressive.
Yeah, they have. They're such a confident side, Richmond, and 3 on the trot, and all of a sudden we're starting to see that belief and I guess that build in which we hope we'd see in the pre-season. Ty Vickery returns tonight. He'll add some strength up forward, but you just feel like they have to start well on the road. And you feel like tonight we'll learn a little bit about Richmond as to whether they're a genuine finals contender or how far they are off the best sides in the competition, and Fremantle is certainly one of those at the moment. So it's going to be really curious viewing tonight, listening on the radio to find out if Richmond can push one of the best sides in the competition. As we've said, the Western Bulldogs are able to do so. Adelaide got close last week. How close can the Tigers get tonight?
Now, Matt, one of the intriguing battles of the weekend, the Bombers and the Cats, 2 teams desperate for wins, 2 teams who plenty was expected of before the season began.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a massive game for both sides. They sit middle of the table, and if you start to lose games like this, all of a sudden it becomes a long way to make it to the top 8. Essendon had their chances against Richmond last week. They just couldn't capitalise. And today, listen to James Hird, the Essendon coach, chat. Jake Carlisle kicked 1 goal for. It was those sort of little moments that really let them down. Whereas Geelong, they're coming back from Subiaco, where they played the West Coast Eagles last week. So how much is in those long trips back from the West? We probably expect Geelong are a bit better side at the moment, but I don't discount the Bombers pulling off what should be a big game. No Jobe Watson, no Dustin Fletcher, so that's, of course, against their favour. But I think this is a real game where they have West Coast next week. They lose these next 2 games, sort of 4 and 7's a long way to come back from.
Now, over in Adelaide, Port versus the Bulldogs. The Power started slowly last week, but they look to be coming back into the form. The Dogs have been inconsistent but improving. Is this a danger game for Port?
And this is, again, another really interesting game. Port Adelaide had a good win against Melbourne, 3 goals to 1 in the opening quarter, and then Port Adelaide kicked 16 of the last 18 goals. So, I mean, you can kind of read that any way you want, but the stats sort of say that Port Adelaide have won 10 out of their last 23 games. So they're a bit up and down at the moment, and the Western Bulldogs have been one of the great surprise packets so far this season. They returned to the winners list last week against GWS. They're without Marcus Bontempelli, who's a bit of their X-factor in the middle and can go up forward as well. But a great test to come to the Adelaide Oval. It's a hard place to win. The Bulldogs might surprise a few people and come away with 4 points.
Well, Matt, it promises to be a great weekend of AFL footy. Of course, there's a match also on the Queen's birthday with Melbourne versus Collingwood. But, Matt, thank you very much for your wrap-up today.
Thanks, Mark. Cheers.
The Golden State Warriors have drawn first blood in the NBA Finals, taking Game 1 108-100 over Cleveland in overtime. The Warriors' Australian centre Andrew Bogut announced his presence with an early block on LeBron James. The Cavs superstar kept his team close, scoring a game-high 44 points.
Three-pointer for LeBron James.
But the Warriors' superior depth proved the key. Golden State star point guard Stephen Curry finished with 26, while Australia's Matthew Dellavedova was held scoreless in 9 minutes on court. Game 2 of the best-of-7 series will be played on Monday morning Australian time. The Queensland Firebirds will be shooting for their second Trans-Tasman netball title when the finals campaign begins this weekend. The Firebirds will have the home court advantage on Sunday when they host the winner of tonight's clash between New South Wales Swifts and West Coast Fever.
They're great friends off the court and they've formed a formidable combination on it. The Firebirds are hoping to reach their 3rd straight grand final. Romelda Aiken has just claimed another prize, her 3rd most valuable player award. But she's quick to shoot down questions about herself.
You know, just taking it one game at a time, because it's what I do. I don't really get carried away in the game or whatnot. I just do my job.
Her partner in the goal circle, Gretel Tippett, spent her junior years on a basketball court. She's switched sports, but she hasn't abandoned a basketball staple, the layup.
Yeah, it's been, I think, a learning experience for the umpires as well, but Romelda seals off really well, so it just opens it up for me.
The move has stumped the best shooter in championship history.
Tried it once, didn't work, won't do it again.
While their rivals battle it out tonight, the Firebirds will be well rested when they chase their 11th win in a row on Sunday.
Oh, that's definitely an advantage for us, but we know that on Sunday that whoever we meet, they're going to bring their best form to us.
The Firebirds say they're still driven by the pain of last year's grand final loss to the Vixens. Mark Hydes, ABC News.
And Sally Pearson will return home in the next few days after undergoing surgery in Rome on a broken wrist. That's Grandstand for now. Don't forget you can also watch us on iView and Grandstand Online.